Welcome to Soul Seeker. I'm Sam Kabert, and I'll be your guide on this journey. I started the show back in 2019, chasing answers like many of us do. But what I've come to understand is this: it's not the seeking that fulfills us. It's what we find in the quiet stillness beneath the search. When we stop chasing and learn to be with what is, we access a deeper wisdom. One that leads not to more doing, but to ease, grace, joy, and true fulfillment. My mission with this podcast is to help high performers just like yourself to regulate your nervous system, reprogram subconscious patterns, and embody emotional freedom so you can lead with clarity, resilience, and alignment. Welcome to Soul Seeker. Let's grow. What up, fam, and welcome back to another episode of the Soul Seeker Podcast. It's your host, as always, Sam Kabert, and super excited to bring you today's guest. Her name is Alice Shikina. She's a friend of mine through the speaker circuit. Her specialty is really in negotiation and mediation. So what she's bringing to this episode is how to be a more effective communicator, not just nonviolent communication, but verbal communication, meaning our body language, all of that type of stuff. We're also going to talk about life and death, the human experience, all the things. So you guys are going to enjoy this one. If you're new to the show, hit subscribe. If you're a returning guest or returning listener, I should say, and you haven't left the show a rating and review, please do so. It helps the show grow. And if you'd like to go deeper with me, the best way to do so is by joining our free breath club. Yes, I said free. Every single Wednesday, I lead guided breathwork sessions. Check the show notes to join. Other than that, enjoy this episode with Alice. Hey there, and welcome back to another episode of the Soul Seeker Podcast. Before we get started, we're going to do what we always do on this show. We're going to ground with 3 simple breaths. So for all of you out there in listening land, if you're doing something where you can't close your eyes, just be mindful of that. You may not be able to close your eyes, but you can always breathe with us. So Alice, for you, for me, and for all of you listening, I would invite you to just slow down, take a seat, and Alice, we can close down our eyes, sitting straight up, feeling your feet on the floor, and through your nose, inhaling all the way up. Sipping in a bit more air at the top. And a big sigh, let it go. We'll do 2 more like that. Inhaling through the nose, letting the belly and the back body expand. Sipping in a bit more air at the top. And a big sigh, let it go, let it go, let it go. And one more slow, nourishing inhale through the nose as the belly expands and the back body expands too, and bringing that breath all the way up, sipping in a bit more air at the top, and sighing it out. That's it. Just letting the breath return to its natural state, no rhythm, and there we go. Alice, welcome to the show. So good to have you here. I'm excited to riff with you here.
I'm excited to be here too. Thanks for having me, Sam.
Yeah, absolutely. We met a couple, maybe few years ago at this point at a speaker event. But for everyone listening, could you just give a quick little intro of who you are, what you do, and maybe even throw that little tidbit of the recent award that you got too?
Thanks, Sam. So I am a mediator. I do workplace conflicts and divorce mediations, and I'm also a negotiation communication coach. So I help people really level up and sharpen their communication skills. And thank you for mentioning the award. So Community Boards in San Francisco gave me the honor of receiving the 2025 Peacemaker Award. So that is for anyone who has really shown a lot of work in the mediation and conflict resolution field. And they give it to one person a year. So I was very honored to receive that distinction this past year.
That's awesome. Congrats again. And let's dive into your background. We're going to talk about like life and death and go deep on this episode, which I'm so stoked to talk about, very existential topics. But before we do, you mentioned to me that you have a background in theater and you are very familiar with breathwork. Tell us about that a little bit.
So one of the interesting things about theater, if you are studying theater as a serious career, right, not just hey, let's be in a play, but studying to be an actor, one of the things that we have to do is we have to clear all of the trauma that we have, because if you're playing a scene where you have to cry or someone has died or, it can't trigger you. So you have to clear all of that. So we work both with acting coaches and movement coaches and voice coaches. And in the voice piece of it, we do a lot of breath work because they want your breath to be connected not only to your voice, but also to your emotions.
And because I don't have a background in that, so I'm just kind of curious, like, how did they teach that? What are some of the lessons, if you could share with us?
So, when you said at the very end of the 3 breaths, and you said, let it out as a sigh. So we do a lot of the breathing and we go, ha, 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 and like attaching it. And so you want to learn to breathe with your diaphragm and speak using the breath that is being pushed from your diaphragm. Many people who have not had any training, you will notice that they speak either from the chest or from the throat. And so what that does is it strains your vocal cords. And so you want to really attach your diaphragm, your breathing and your diaphragm with your voice so that you don't strain your vocal cords. And that's also where your emotions lie, right? Right in the breadbasket. That's where a lot of stuff is hiding.
Yeah, it's so true. And for someone that's listening and is not really that familiar with this, or even hasn't done much breath work, which I'd be surprised if they're an ongoing listener and they haven't, but it's still worth mentioning. Like, how would someone apply that? How could they actually start to speak while utilizing their diaphragm?
So one of the ways that we train is we would lay on the floor. And you want to make sure that when you take a deep breath in, it's your belly that's rising. It's not about your shoulders moving up or your chest going out, right? Some people go, right? And then for those of you who can see me, you can see that my shoulders are rising up. That should not be happening. So they have you lay on the floor, and that way you can tell if your belly is moving up or down. And so if you're laying on the floor, it's much more difficult to have your shoulders move up and down because the floor is sort of preventing that, right? And so we do a lot of that practice. We practice like exhaling like you did, ha! But they want to make sure that it's the diaphragm that's pushing the air out. It's not you just using your vocal cords without having the breath behind that.
Beautiful. Thank you for explaining that. And probably one last one on this topic of like theater. So how are they clearing the trauma? Like what are the exercises that they do?
So there are a lot of different ones, and it's been many decades since I've done
just of what you remember. Yeah, for sure.
So one of the things, I recall, they want you to think about something that, is something that's in your childhood that's sort of holding you back, and you have to kind of do a little bit of self-reflection. And then I would say like the first year to year and a half of the acting class, we never used words. We had to just be using a lot of like movement and thoughts, right? And the thoughts are driving everything. So one of the things I remember, one of the things that they said was create a 5-minute scene by yourself, whereby you're going back to this thing that's traumatized you, and like, what do you want to do with that energy, with that? And so I created a scene whereby the things that were weighing me down at the time, I carried literally, like I went and found like concrete bricks and I put it into a military bag. And so it was probably like 50 pounds that I was carrying on my backpack. This is during the scene that I was acting for everyone else. So again, the scene had no words. So I was walking around, it was very heavy, and the longer I walked, the heavier it became. And for me, that backpack symbolized the baggage that I had, and I had very specific things in mind, right? And then I put it down and I unpacked it and put it on the ground, and then I walked away. Now, that sounds like, okay, fine, you can just do it, but it wasn't about just going through the motions. It was about really understanding for myself that when I walked away physically from that scene and that baggage I was carrying, that I was emotionally actually doing the work. So it actually was very, very difficult for me to physically walk away from it because energetically I knew that it had a hold on me. And so when I was able to walk away from it, I felt so much lighter because I'm working with the things, the traumas. And trauma, it could be big T, little t, right? Big traumas or little traumas. And so it could be little traumas, things that someone said to you that just stays with you and is ingrained in your brain and makes grooves because you repeat that same, criticism that you heard when you're 6 years old. So to be able to let go of that, we worked through a lot of those different types of things. It's just one example, Sam. We had many other ways to work through it, right? But what they compared it to is if you think of a pole and that is your emotional life, you want access to all of it as a good or great actor. You want to be able to access crying, anger, all of it. You can't do it if you have things that are blocking you on that pole. That pole needs to be clean. And so as you work through your trauma and get rid of it, you have access to all the emotions without it triggering something.
Yeah, that's super fascinating. I'm glad you shared that with us. I think that exercise is so profound. Like someone listening or just on the surface can be like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. Sounds surface. But what I love about that is its embodiment, right? It's really moving into your body because a lot of times, even if traditional talk therapy, but we could look at CBT or EMDR, things like that. They've been great for a lot of people, sure. But a lot of times we're not able to get that felt sensation. So I really like it because when you are describing the carrying of the bricks in the 50-pound backpacking bag and taking each one out, to me, what that feels like is a rite of passage more than anything else.
Absolutely. And there are other things too where the Meisner technique where you are trying to really sharpen your emotional intelligence. And so I'm trying to read your energy levels. And so we're really literally just having one sentence that we can each say, but I'm trying to read what is your facial expression saying to me? What is your tone saying to me? What is your body language saying to me? And so I'm able to say certain things using one sentence. And if you don't feel like I am correct, you have to repeat back the exact same phrase I said to you, except with a question mark at the end. And that question mark is signaling to me, I'm not sure that you got it right, Alice. I'm not quite sure that that's exactly right? And so we go back and forth and back and forth. So it really hones your ability to read extraordinarily nuanced facial expression, tone, body language, all of that. So it was really a fascinating time. And I really feel like the learnings that I got doing a 2-year studio program is something that every single person could benefit from because it really gets you in touch with your emotional intelligence. It really sharpens it. And it also helps you become aware of your own emotions and how they may come up.
100%. About a year ago, I did an improv class here in town with a buddy for the first time. And I forget why, other than he and I are just silly and goofy. And we used to have a podcast together back in 2017 through the pandemic, really, and a food show. So I thought it'd be fun. And also I was like, I could probably learn some things that help me on stage as a speaker, and I just keep getting flashbacks with everything that you're saying, even with the kind of nonverbal communication and mirroring things back and moving on stage without speaking. I remember we did this one where we were animals and I was like a skunk and we were a family of skunks, but I was like the baby skunk or the kid skunk and, I pretended to spray them and just it was all improv, it was really getting outside of your comfort zone. It was a stretch for me. So yeah, I would highly recommend people checking something like that out, even for emotional awareness and healing. That's a super good point. Let's talk about nonverbal communicating. You are a mediator, right? Or is it mediation and negotiation, right?
I do both.
Yeah. So there's that. You mentioned the acting background, all of this. For the common person, what should they know about nonverbal communication? How can they integrate that into their life?
I love that you asked this question because I'm on my soapbox about it. It is something that is truly something that I'm very passionate about, mainly because when I'm coaching people, I am starting to realize people have no idea what they're communicating nonverbally. Right? So you get the nonverbal communication 101 class, which is Hey, make sure you make eye contact. Hey, make sure that you're leaning in. Make sure that you look interested, right? All of that. Make sure you nod your head sideways. But that is literally like the kindergarten level, right? And also, people might learn to read a little bit of nonverbal communication, right? If I have my hand on my hips, right, I'm looking a little sassy, or if I have my arms crossed, I might look like I'm closed. Again, that's about reading. What people are not understanding is what are they projecting and what are they actually communicating. 60% of communication is nonverbal. There are stats going over the internet saying 93% is nonverbal. That is actually untrue. It just sort of went viral, and it's based on one study that was later debunked. So it's around 60%. And so what I really want people to understand is that even if you show up, even if you say the perfect words and you articulate yourself, you communicate directly exactly whatever it is that you want to communicate, if 60% of your body language is saying something else or has a very cold feeling to it, everyone is actually going to be responding to the 60% that you showed up with, not the 40% of your verbal communication. And I get this all the time from people saying, I said all the right things and the conversation went sideways. And my first question is, were you being judgmental in that conversation? And more than likely, the answer is yes. And I'm going to say, if you're thinking it, you're communicating it, okay? If you're thinking someone is whatever way, that they're an idiot, that they're incompetent, that you don't like them, that they're a terrible speaker, whatever you're thinking is getting communicated through 60%. So what do we do about that? You shut down in the conversation. I'm not talking about in your whole life. In the conversation, you shut down any judgmental thoughts. Do not think judgmental thoughts because it's going to come across, all right? In your tone, in your facial expression, in the way that you just show up energetically. And so then the next question people ask is, how do I stop my judgmental thoughts, right? And so I say, focus on something that you admire about that person. It can be something small. It can be something like, I really appreciate how they show up on time at work. It can be, I appreciate that they're thoughtful, right? Like, what is something that you can think about that is positive about that person, and hold that thought during the conversation so that it doesn't get overridden by judgmental thoughts. Judgment is going to be the killer of any kind of open dialogue. If you show up with judgment, you can pretty much cancel your conversation. It's not going to go well, and you're not going to get what you want.
Yeah, and I mean, you deal in work with some very high stakes situations, talking about mediating like divorce and things like that, and that means like very heightened feelings and thoughts. So I know for people listening, like, we all want to not even manage. I mean, I think that's the problem. Most people manage their triggers as opposed to get to the root of it, and that's what I help people with. But there is a place and space for like compartmentalization, then coming back to it later, and that's what management is more about. So for someone listening, like, if they're really more in that heightened state and it's really hard to find that one thing that they admire about that person, what's the advice you have there? Hey, it's Sam. Can I share something real quick that I think might actually help you? If you've ever felt overwhelmed by your emotions, like you're doing all the right things, yet you still feel off, it's not because you're broken. You know, most of us were never taught how to feel in a way that actually helps us heal. That's why I created Breath Club, a free community where I guide weekly breathwork sessions to help you regulate your nervous system, process emotions, and return to clarity. We use something called the 90-second reset, a simple, science-backed practice that shows how fast emotions shift when you allow yourself to feel them fully. You'll get access to live calls, a community, and on-demand breathwork exercises to reset anytime. No pressure, just an invitation to feel safe in your body again. Links in the show notes if you want to join us.
Already in a heightened state, you're emotional, you're angry, if you're irritated, any of those things, don't go into the conversation or exit from the conversation. And by exiting, I don't mean you turn around on your heels and walk out, because that's stonewalling. You can say, let's say you and I are in a relationship and I'm very upset. I can say to you, Sam, I need a moment to calm down right now. I will check back in with you in about an hour and see if we can continue this, but I need to take a time out. If you are the person receiving that message, it behooves you to agree. It does not help to say, no, we are having this conversation now because, whatever, because the person who is feeling upset is no longer in their thinking brain. They're in their emotional brain only. They cannot think, they cannot have logic, they cannot have reason going on. So why do you want to have a conversation with someone who has no access to that part of their brain, right? So if you want to actually have a civil conversation with someone, when they ask you for the timeout, grant it to them. And the person asking needs to be responsible enough to come back to the table to say, okay, I've managed myself. I went and took a breath work class with Sam. I feel a little bit more grounded, right? And then I'm going to re-engage in the conversation. But I always tell people, don't try to have a negotiation or a difficult conversation if you are upset, because 100% it will not go well.
Yeah. So from there, the next topic to speak about is tone, now that we're verbally communicating. So what is your advice then for the tonality that someone would be using when they communicate that?
So if your tone is sort of like, what is it? It's like, it's subconscious. You don't have to I don't have to think about let me think of what kind of tone. If I show up with no judgment, my tone will sound non-judgmental. If I show up with judgment, my tone is going to automatically convey that. So it's not so much that I am going to be judgmental and I'm going to deliberately make my tone non-judgmental. It literally matches the frequency of your thoughts.
Yeah.
Right? So you want to be very careful what you're thinking. If you're a leader and you're talking to an employee and you're thinking oh, your days are numbered, I'm going to fire you in the next 40 days, right? That is going to show up in my tone. So it's not something that we control in that kind of a way where I say, I'm going to show up with this kind of tone. You control it with your thoughts. So if you can show up and say, I'm being open-minded, I don't have any judgment, I'm curious, the tone will come across that way. If I show up and say, I'm not going to listen to anything this person has to say because I don't believe them, it is going to show up in my tone.
And what we're talking about, a big through line that we're talking about here is energy, right? It's the energetics of how we show up. And I know that's a big part of who you are. So talk with us a little bit about energy.
You're hitting all my favorite topics, so thank you.
Yeah, of course.
So energy is really important. And I do feel like people underestimate the power of energy. So energy, number one, is I like to call it contagious. Some people are like, oh, that's a negative word, but it is contagious. It passes, right? So if I show up with positive energy, you're going to feel it. If you as a speaker show up and you have lots of vibrant, passionate energy and you're talking, your audience is going to feel that energy, right? It's like a contagion. It comes onto them, transfers onto them. If you show up and you are nervous, you're afraid, you're not sure if your message is going to land, that energy is felt by the audience. And so energy can be used to make yourself magnetic. Your personality can be magnetic. So if you want someone to be persuaded of your idea, you want to make sure you show up with the right energy, not just the words, not just the preparation, but show up with energy that says in a nonverbal way, hey, I think my idea is great. I think you're going to think my idea is great. And I'm seriously going to enjoy working collaboratively together. That energy is being communicated, right, in a nonverbal manner. And so if you show up saying, well, I highly doubt that you're going to agree with me, but I'm going to try verbally to get you on board, you're not going to succeed, or your chances of succeeding are less because you are communicating with your energy. And you don't believe that we're going to get in alignment and that we're going to find ourselves on the same page. So it's so incredibly important to really consider showing up. What do you want to communicate with the energy that you're showing up with.
Yeah, a big word for me as of late, the past several months, has been conviction. Confidence. I feel personally like I have a high degree of confidence, but really leaning into or exploring what conviction means, the unwavering certainty of what I'm doing is right and worth it, to quote Ryan Boucher, their definition of conviction. And I just think that is like taking your confidence to the next level. And it's really about that energetic exchange that you're talking about here.
The other thing too, yes on confidence, yes on conviction. The other piece is the audience, or the you, meaning like the person you're speaking to. You want to make them feel seen, heard, appreciated, liked, right? So because if you show up with confidence and conviction, that's like, hey, it's all about me. It's not going to land as much as if you show up and you're like, I'm here to serve you. I'm here to work with you. I'm going to enjoy your energy, not mine, right? Because if you do that, people feel like, oh, this person is a very warm presence. I like this person's energy, right? We're talking about energy again. And so if you do that, then you're going to get even more people than if you just show up just with the confidence and just the confidence, because you want to also include the person you're speaking to or with.
Yeah, absolutely. This is great. And, a lot of what we've been talking about is very practical to help us on the human experience. Now let's have some fun and zoom out. We're all energetic beings here, right? Let's get a little esoteric. So talk with me a little bit about your viewpoint when we zoom out from this human experience, like life and death and how we're energetic beings.
So my belief system is not tied to like one kind of a religion. So I just want to sort of preface it there. I have like sort of my own belief system. And I do believe that we are all energetic. And I do believe that this container that we call a human body is merely a temporary container. And that our energies and our spirit, as people want to think of, like continue on. And so recently, I experienced the death of my father. And I feel like it was just a transference of energy, that he left the human container, but that he is still around, that his spirit is still around, his energy is still around, and may be transferred somewhere else, or maybe somewhere, right? In some religions, they're like, oh, they went to heaven. And then in reincarnation, they're like, oh, he turned into a frog, right? So, but that it's still in existence somewhere. And so for me, I believe it is all a continuous journey, that it is not a journey that begins with, oh, I am born, and ends with, I'm dying, but that is just the chapter, that there's a much larger book, right? And that we just, and it's really interesting, Sam, I read something online and I was like, this is so perfect. It encapsulates like sort of how I think about life. There was a made up conversation between like twins that were inside the womb. And they said, what do you think happens when we leave the womb? And the other twin was like, I don't know, I'm afraid, I don't know what's going to happen. And the other one said, well, I heard that like you start breathing from your nose and your mouth. And they're like, what? Like, I can't imagine that. Like right now we're getting all of our nutrients and oxygen from the umbilical cord. What do you mean we're going to be using our nose? And they said, not only that, we're going to eat with our mouth. And they were like, I cannot imagine that. That's like the weirdest thought, that we're going to use our mouths to eat. And so they went through all the different variations of the difference between a child who's in the womb and how they get their oxygen and their food and the drink, and how like so different it was. It was difficult to even envision a life where you're using different parts of your body to do things that you can't even imagine. And I thought, that's it. That's exactly it. We can't imagine what it's like. It doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. It just means that we are short on our imagination.
It's a good way to think about it. And that is quite a long cartoon or what is it called? Sketch. No, thank you for bringing that in. Thank you for sharing about the passing of your father as well, and my condolences. But everything that you're speaking about makes me think of the Pixar film Soul. Have you seen that one?
I don't think I have.
well, you got to check it out. It came out on Christmas Day, 2020. It's with Jamie Foxx. It's Pixar, so he's the main character. And no spoilers here, but essentially it's about the human experience. And I mean, it's called Soul, right? So it gets into some things that it calls like the great before, and kind of like, you know, the souls choosing their human experience and then going through the portal and flying into the earth. And I'm like, oh my God, this is so good, you know?
Yeah. So I'm somewhat of that believer, right? Something like that this is just a chapter in a much longer story.
Yeah, 100%. Same here. And it's interesting that you brought up the frog, like your father reincarnating to the frog. Do you have any ties to the frog, or that was just kind of what came through?
Oh, just kind of what came through.
Yeah. You may know, I work with a lot of plant and earth medicine, and there's the toad, which is the archetype of the frog. And obviously frog comes from, for those people listening that are into this, but like the combo medicines, the frog, and then Bufo is the toad. And yeah, those, and the toads actually come in synchronistically a few days today. So who knows? Because it's not as big a part of my life these days. But yeah, no, it's so fascinating. And with the passing of your father, what did that look like? Was that like deep grief, or was that kind of leaning into your beliefs in terms of what happens next? What did that look like?
So it's interesting. So he had been diagnosed with colon cancer about a year and some change earlier, and my mom became his caregiver, right? And at first it's fine, like she could manage it. And as it went along, well, actually he had surgery, so they said, okay, we took it all out. But because of his age, they couldn't do the chemo and the radiation. So, you know, it's probably bound to come back. So that's part of the story, right? So then eventually, maybe 8 months later, it started to come back. And at that point, they said, we can't do anything because he wouldn't survive surgery, and he wouldn't survive chemo, and he wouldn't survive radiation. There's literally nothing to do. And so for me, because my mom is still healthy and well, and I want her to not, I didn't want her health to degrade due to the stress of being a full-time caregiver, because it's a pretty heavy burden when it gets deep into it, right? Where you can't leave the person at home ever. Your world becomes smaller and smaller. And so for me, it was about two things. One, making sure that my mom stayed healthy, that she doesn't die first because this burden is so heavy. And number two, like my father also suffered from dementia for like 10 years. And so I don't necessarily, it's funny because there are people who disagree with me. I am not the kind of person that says, let's keep someone alive at all cost. That's not me.
Yeah, same.
So I feel like, hey, there are times when it's better to let go. Just let go, because this time is over. And so because of the dementia and because of his failing health, I was feeling like, just let go, Dad. Just let it go and let Mom be free. That was what was going on with me. I have people in my life who did not agree with that sentiment, but that's how I felt. And I felt like it was the empathetic thing to think, right? It wasn't like, oh, I wish you would die. No, I was like, I want peace for both of you. One of you, I want peace to stay on the earth and be able to enjoy a life because you still have your health and well-being. And the other one, I wanted peace because I wanted peace away from the suffering and away from the dementia. Dementia is like a horrible thing to experience because the person slowly disappears right in front of your face, right? So for those reasons, it was not deep grief. Of course, it was sad in the moment. I was there when he passed. But it was more about release to what needs to be. We're all going to die. We don't know when, we don't know how, but to just be in acceptance, to say it's time for everyone, right? It's time for my mom to live her life on her own, and it's time for my dad to go. So it felt really good to experience and be there. As sad as it was good because I felt like that release really helped everyone like move on. Because when you're dealing with sickness like cancer, it's hard to move on with your life as long as it's there. Like cancer is like a bookmark that's just like, I'm here. You can't move forward until it's gone. If it comes back, you're again at another bookmark, right? You can't really move forward. It's always holding you down. And so in my dad's position, I felt like this bookmark is never going to release. So he just needs to exit.
Yeah, I appreciate your vulnerability in sharing that, and I'll echo your beliefs, at least speaking for myself, like it's about quality of life,
Yes.
and I think, I don't know, I think people cling to this human experience because of their belief systems that they probably never truly sat with, and it's more indoctrination from their conditioning and programming, whether it's religion, family, whatever else it is, or society at large. But when you do, and this is not an avoidance thing, it's more just sovereignty, choosing for yourself. But when you do adopt a belief system that there is something beyond this human experience, then you no longer, in my experience of just myself and those close to me and other people I've worked with, you no longer cling to this human experience. And a great example, I was just thinking of a friend yesterday. He was in amazing shape. He was probably like early 30s, like great shape, like athletic, right? And he was facilitating medicine work. So he was very, he studied with some shamans in Peru, and he was bringing that medicine and sharing it with others in the States. And I think what happened was, this was like 2 years ago, he did a backflip in a creek and he became paralyzed, and he basically made the choice to pull the plug because he didn't want that battle. And honestly, I've thought about that a lot in my life and been like, yeah, there are, the Dr. Joe Dispenzas of the world, he's healed himself and he helps others as well. But for me, at least where I'm at now in my life, if that were to happen to me, I'd be like, I don't want that uphill battle. What am I clinging to? I know there's something more than this human experience. So why would I put myself through this suffering? And that's just for myself. I know many others don't see it that way,
Yep. And, one of the things I'm going to tell you, something that I don't tell people. So it's a little bit of my own secret sauce. So, how you're talking about how, if someone were to die, it's a big shock, especially if it's a surprise, right? If it's sudden. And so I have a practice. I don't do this every day. I just do this randomly. But I have a practice of envisioning all the people I care about suddenly dying. And I do this so that if it ever happens, it is not something inconceivable to me. That I can't say, I never imagined this happening to me. I can't believe it's happening to me. So I try to regularly condition my brain to envision. This is not because I'm hoping this will happen. It's just so that I can feel prepared in the event that some kind of tragedy occurs, to at least have felt in my body what it feels like because of my imagination. Like if I imagine, like it's everyone. It's like my parents, my children, my siblings, my nephews, my nieces, literally everyone I go through. And one time I realized I forgot someone. I'm like, oh, I forgot to envision that. Because I don't want to be in a position where the shock is so great that I can't recover from it.
It's an interesting practice, and I appreciate you sharing that. I can see how that could be helpful. And also, at least for me, I'm a believer that we are a co-creator of our reality and our human experience. And when people are stepping into manifestation, it's like a kid in the candy store. It's also training wheels. Like what you say before, it's the elementary way of doing nonverbal communication, right? It's like the elementary trying to figure out like, hey, how do I manifest stuff? Like, oh, I want to see a red convertible right? I never see that, so I'm going to choose that thing. I'm like, okay, sure. And then they see it later that day, and then they get all excited, like whatever the thing is that you ask for that sign. And then we start to notice that our subconscious is creating these manifestations because we have these lingering thoughts and feelings that we weren't really aware of, and that's being mirrored and created in our reality. So the interesting thing to look at your practice is like, I think some people might feel like, well, could I accidentally manifest that happening in this timeline? What are your like personal beliefs and thoughts? Pause. You're holding your breath again, aren't you? Most high performers don't need more doing. They need a nervous system reset. I'm Sam Kaber, and I'm a keynote speaker and nervous system coach, helping people just like yourself to reset from burnout and return to clarity. I work with organizations organizations and audiences ready to move beyond burnout and into embodying clarity. My keynotes blend storytelling, subconscious reprogramming, and live breathwork experiences that get people out of their heads and back into their lives. If you're planning a conference, retreat, or leadership event and want something that doesn't just inspire but actually transforms, head to the link in the show notes. Let's make your next event unforgettable.
Yeah, so I totally believe in manifesting. I've done it before, but I don't feel like just because I'm preparing for something that I'm manifesting that to happen. So that's a very different thing, right? I'm not sitting there thinking like, I hope these people die. It's more like, let me imagine it so I am not like completely blindsided and cannot emotionally recover. I'm trying to build emotional resilience, like just in case. We never know. Like I could be the first one to die. I don't know, right? And so we do that. And also what I find interesting about the whole manifesting thing is if you tell yourself something like, I don't know, I'm going to get a great job or whatever it is that you tell yourself, yes, you can manifest it. And also, you can also make micro decisions multiple times a day that is going to lead you towards your like the thing that you're manifesting, right? So it's not just the universe saying, here you go. It's you making all the subconscious micro decisions multiple times a day, every single day, every week, every month to lead you to that.
100%.
Right? So there's both of those things. You're not just doing it and it's magic. You're putting it out there, yes, and you're working towards there by believing in it.
Yeah, that's one of my messages of soul life balance or soul life mindset, and it's the archetypal energies of yin and yang, right? Having that connection to your spirituality, your higher self, and know that you are a co-creator, but then also being grounded in the human experience, being like, yeah, and you got to do the thing, right? And I mean, I come from the line that was just doing. So, you know, it's kind of like I see this a lot with people. We tend to go the other way of what we're new to, and then from there we need to bring back what we're familiar with to find that balance, you know? So I love that. That's so huge. And the fact that we're talking about like manifesting now and co-creating your reality, tell us a little bit about how you can use your energy to get what you want, because I know that's also something that you're into.
So let me just bring a very concrete example up, okay, of how I manifested using my energy. So this was like maybe 2002, and I was working down in San Bruno, and I was working as a graphic designer at the time. And this is like part energy, this is part manifesting, and this is part negotiation. So it's not only one, it's sort of all the things encompassed. But the entire department got laid off because they said they're going to rehire in Yardley, Pennsylvania, where real estate is cheaper and employees are cheaper. And they said, we're not moving anywhere. We're not going to give you money to move over there, right? So they just said, it's a clean slate. Goodbye, everyone. So you can imagine most people are like, wow, they get their severance and they go on with their lives. I knew in my particular position, I had one client, the client was remote, and I could do it from home. So I knew these things, right? And so I show up with the energy that I believed. Like I believed in I had so much conviction, Sam, that I was like, it is in the interest of the company to keep me. They can pay me from home. I will work from home and have all the preparations lined up for my negotiation. So I'm showing up, very positive energy, going and convincing the person who's going to be hiring me, this new boss. And she just says, sorry, but no. I'm only interested in hiring my people. No offense, Alice, but I don't know you, and therefore you're not my people. So I'm not doing it. Again, another place I could have exited. But I showed up to her boss and I pitched him, and he was like, I really think that's a great idea, and I'm going to let your boss make the final decision. And I wasn't okay with that. So I went to the client, pitched the client, and I went to another VP, pitched, like I was talking to everyone. So I was building alliances. but I was also showing up with like a lot of positive energy, the energy that I normally like to show up with anyway. And so of course, everyone's buying into my idea. Like, yes, it's great. Yes, we'll put in a good word. Thank you, right? So I wasn't showing up negatively. I wasn't showing up complaining. I wasn't showing up bummed out that I was getting laid off. I showed up and said, I have a dream. This is fantastic. This will be great for everyone. It's a win-win. How can you say no to this? I thought it all through. Here's my pitch, right? So I'm showing up with that kind of energy. And I'm also manifesting like I want a job like here and working from home. So finally, the boss comes back to me and says, hey, Alice, I don't want to hire you, but there are too many people telling me I need to consider it. So I will give you 3 months of a test run. So I will go to Yardley, Pennsylvania. You will stay at home. I got to keep my severance. And so she said, let's try this. It's going to be contract only. It's part-time only, whatever. At that point in time, I had small children, Sam. So I would be able to work from home and stay with my kids. I was bummed out that she gave me 3 months, but guess what? Those 3 months turned into 8 years.
Wow.
I got to work from home. Why? Because number one, I manifested that idea. I was like putting it out there that is what's going to happen to me. I had 100% conviction that was what was going to happen. Number two, I showed up with the right energy. And number three, I employed a lot of strategic negotiation tactics. So all three together landed me that. But I'm going to tell you one more story where I literally just manifested like this magic job. So fast forward many years later, and I thought to myself, I really want to work at a startup. I don't know how, I don't know where, but I think the startup idea sounds really, really cool. And I know there's a lot of startups happening right now, so I want a job like that. And I just put it out there. And then I was driving for Lyft as a driver, and then I enrolled my child in a school. It was a tech startup school. Didn't think anything of it. I was the parent. So I'm showing up with my energy, saying, hey, I'm a Lyft driver. I have all these great ideas of where you can take your kids and da-da-da-da-da. I was sharing all these things. And the guy, because he knew I was working part-time, he said, the admissions guy said, why don't you come in for a couple of weeks, we will pay you for your time, and you can start to make some phone calls to bring in more parents to introduce them to the school. Within 2 weeks, I had a job offer at that startup. Like literally the thing that I put out there just landed in my lap.
There you go. And in both of these examples, you're taking massive action.
Yes.
Yeah. It's great. It's great. I appreciate you sharing those. And it's really a blending. And, if you guys are going to get anything out of this, most importantly, yes, obviously nonverbal communication, how we're being mindful of our own energy, but also the blending of the doing and the being. I think that's so crucial. And a good action item is just to reflect, be like, hey, am I a little bit more in the being or am I a little bit more in the doing? People get confused with balance. They're like, oh, I don't like this idea of balance because there's no such thing as balance. And I'm like, where did you get the concept that balance means 50-50?
Right. Right.
Like I grew up wakeboarding, I'm a surfer and all that. We're balancing it. Like you use a balance board and never on a balance board are you 50-50 on either sides. It's like a teeter-totter. So just understanding that you're going to be back and forth a little bit. So I love it. This is such a great conversation. What are you up to these days? I know you're delivering your keynotes. So what else you got going on?
I have an upcoming Fluent in Influence course that I'm teaching online for anyone who's interested. It's actually live. So I show up and I'm going to teach the class. It's a very small class, 8 people or so. So if anyone wants to come check it out, ShikinaNegotiationAcademy.com. They can come and find the Fluent in Influence communication course. So that's up next. And I'm working on a second book. My first book was Negotiating with Your Kids, and it's on Amazon. And the second book is going to be called Don't Sleep on the Couch, Negotiating with Your Spouse.
Oh, that's so good. That's so good. Wow, catchy. Yeah, I almost asked you have a new book coming, so I guess it was my intuition and I gaslit myself to not ask the question because, that's very cool. The first one is negotiating with your kids. As we're just starting to wrap this up, and just to touch on that real quick, what are some quick hitters for the parents out there?
It's funny because I just got off a podcast a few hours ago talking about the exact same thing on Toastmasters. So I would say the biggest, biggest takeaway would be to listen more to your children. So even if they say something like, oh, I hate my math teacher, instead of responding by saying something like, That's not very nice. Just say why, right? And just say like, what do they do? And just ask questions, be curious, and listen. Because if you listen more to your children, you will build a firm relationship with them. But if you are always like sort of being like the know-it-all, the parent, I know best, you're going to start to find out that your relationship starts to erode when they turn into teenagers. They just want to be heard. So just listen. You don't have to even give advice, because sometimes they feel like, well, I don't want to talk to my parents because they're just going to come back down and shove a bunch of advice down my throat that I don't want to hear. So maybe you just show up one day and just listen, and don't even think about giving them advice. Simply listen.
Yeah, I love that. That's awesome. And it's such a great reminder too, because when we're doing this kind of work, like we're equipped with the tools, right? And then we kind of look at the kids and be like, wait, they're different. And it's like, well, if you just look at it the same way and just kind of, I don't want to say dumb it down, make it more accessible, right? It's the same thing. And I think I mentioned to you, I don't remember, but my son's 1.5 and the other one, she's 8. So I get a good little, the baby toddler stuff, and then the 8-year-old where you can go a little bit deeper. But with my son being 1.5, he's very advanced, it's pretty cool. But he'll like cry, mommy, 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 whatever. And I'll be like, do you want to see mama? And then he'll stop. He'll be like, And I'm like, can you breathe for me? Can you show me how you breathe? And here's this little 20-month-year-old that's like, and then he exhales out. I'm like, do you feel better? He's like, I'm like, do you like that? He's like, it's so awesome. But yeah, I think that's huge. So very cool. Thanks for sharing that.
I love that, Sam. That's wonderful. All the parents should learn that.
It's so much fun. Like, I mean, I never want him to cry or anything like that, but it is an opportunity to practice our breathing. And I'm like, oh man, as he gets older, we can just do so much more. I'm looking forward to that.
That's fantastic. I'm just lucky to have you as a dad.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. And same with your kids. I know you said one of them's just graduating college, right?
No, high school, and the other one is in the middle of college.
That's it. Okay. Yeah. Well, Alice, thank you so much. Everyone go deeper with Alice. I have the links to connect with her in her book in the show notes. Check it out. Alice, thank you so much for carving out the time to come on Soul Seeker.
Thank you, Sam, for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was fun. We'll do it again. Thanks so much for listening to the very end. I hope you enjoyed this episode just as much as I did. To go deeper, make sure you join our Breath Club to inquire about one-on-one coaching or bring me in to speak at your next event. Make sure you check the show notes for all my contact information. Thanks so much for being here, and I will see you on the next episode of the Soul Seeker Podcast. So much for listening to the very end. I hope you dug this podcast just as much as I enjoyed it. If you got anything at all, please, if you could just do me a favor and leave a 5-star review wherever you listen to this podcast. It